Hi, my name is Shiddiq Ikbalul Ilmi. My data number is T20196074. Here I'd like to explain about the functional theory of translation. Functional theory of translation that from the actors, and then when the main aspect of translation was set from the structural linguistic of a text to the pragmatic aspect of linguistic, a new orientation toward the function of language. Katarina Reith and Hans J. Vermeer developed the functional translation theory in clear opposition to the traditional linguistic translation theory, and then the paradox of this new approach necessitation a new terminology. And then going beyond the translation studies of James S. Holmes, 1985, the authors target the others postulated the general validity of the approach before one spoke about such and target language text author reader and another, but now the terms are search text and receptor. Translation is seen as a process with translated as the product and the translator as the one who is acting. Because the functional translation theory is based on the interdependence of language and culture. Here, the science of translation is part of linguistics. Every statement being influenced by inner and outer circumstances. Not everything can be said everywhere. As partners of communication, procedure, and receptor of a text are subjects to a station, and the station is embedded into the context of a culture of which language is part. Rev and Vermeer based their theory on the idea that is translator has a start from a text that is given to him to understand and interpret it, and formulate the result to text as the search text is an offer of information to the receptor from the producer in the sought language. It is the translator's text to formulate a translation that is an offer of information too. So the second is I'd like to explain about the model of intercultural communication. After having studied the general condition and rules valid from the acts of translation, a model of intercultural communication, an outlet to make the universally applicable. The person is a member of the society, and his or her behavior is determined by the circumstances of time and place in which the person access. The, the circumstances are social circumstances, culture, other circumstances, situation, and the inner current disposition. Consequently, a translation is realized as a transfer between different cultures. The text must be understood and it has been to interpreted in the certain situation. The translation has been familiar with both cultures and he has to decide with part of all the possible implicated and interpretation. He must take into consideration and which can be left out. So the so ver- verbatim translation is not possible because of the difference of cultures, and therefore it is necessary to try to reach equivalence reproduction that would imply that because of the cultural difference there is necessarily a difference of his situation, which means that the search message is changed into a new altered receptor message. So the next is scenes and frames and theory. In order to allocate it, the acts of translating us to the difference of culture, Farmer and Wright refer to the scenes and frames and theory or Fennerens or Snell Horby. According to the theory of a scene is an image of the world in the mind of a person, which is department of the culture, situation, and disposition of the individual. In order to put this scene into word, a frame is used. You may say that this frame is the expression of a scene, which again cannot be adjective but depends on the circumstances of the transmission. The translation strategy is to imagine the scenes of the source text and to find an appropriate frame in the receptor language. So the next is the Scopus theory. This theory says that the theory of translation as a transfer between cultures is integrated into the theory of action because texts are produced to serve a particular purpose and person. So this focus with purpose and person. That means that they represent action decide the interact and communication with others. The translation is therefore seen as a special kind of interactive action. These actions start from a situation which always already contains a source text, the primary action. It is not the task of the translator to decide if to act, but what to transfer and how to continue acting. In this respect, a theory of translation can be called a complex theory of action. So, the scopus of what is translated need to be completely identical with the of-source text. So this is the relationship between scopus and theory of translation. And then scopus is translated has to be coherence coherence in itself, and thus also has to be coherence between the original and the translation. It is important for whom or why something is translated. Okay. And then scopus is synonym with the terms purpose and then cause and function. So the last is Factor Model of Translation by Katarina Reis. As already mentioned, there can be no complete identity between the source text and the receptor text, yet equivalence can be achieved at varying degree. The quality of the equivalence can only be judged with reference to the condition of the origin. Just the short text can only be completely understood in the situation of its original is known. So can the textual equivalence of a translation. Riff and Vermeer developed a factor model for the translation which was supposed to represent objectively the structure of the condition influencing the process of translation. The translator held the central position in the process because as the recipient of the source text and the producer of the receptor text, the decision is respect to the translation are up to him. And then all the other factors is not fixed but a variable quantity. There's factor being the producer, the text, the culture, and the context. The decisive factor from translation remain the social cultures and which is always influenced by factors like time and place. The context of the situation of what is translated in them are often different from that of the short text. So that's all for me from my explain about the translation functional theory of translation. Thank you so much for watching me. Bye bye.